My colleague asked me why I had sent her that message. I had never sent her any message. And when she showed me her phone, I was looking at an account with my name, my photo, and a year of conversations I had never had. Her name is Claire, and she is 31 years old, and for the past 14 months, someone has been sending professional messages in her name. Not spam, not phishing, something far more precise. Carefully worded emails to her freelance clients explaining that she was having personal issues and might be unreliable. LinkedIn messages to colleagues she had never spoken to on LinkedIn, raising subtle concerns about a project she was managing. One message, "This is the one that undid everything," sent to her employer's HR department suggesting she might be looking for other opportunities and would be reducing her commitment to current work. She did not know any of this was happening. She thought she was having a bad professional year. Projects falling through, clients going quiet, a promotion conversation that simply stopped progressing. She had spent months analyzing herself, her communication style, her follow-through, her presentation in meetings, wondering what she was doing wrong. She was doing nothing wrong. There was a person behind her, at a slight remove, sending a different version of her to everyone who mattered. The person who found it was not Claire. It was her colleague Mara, who had received a message that seemed slightly off. She could not say exactly why. She just said, later, that it sounded like Claire, but a version of Claire she didn't quite recognize. Too flat, too resigned. Like someone had studied Claire's writing style carefully and had not quite gotten the warmth right. Mara had shown the message to Claire over coffee on a Tuesday morning, and Claire had looked at the account that sent it and understood, in the specific still way that understanding sometimes arrives, that this was the beginning of an explanation for a very long bad year. Claire did not panic at the cafe. She sat with Mara's phone in both hands for a long time and scrolled through the account slowly, the way you look at something you do not want to look at, but cannot look away from. The account had been created 14 months ago. It used her real first and last name. It used a slightly modified version of her professional headshot. The same photo, cropped slightly differently, which she would later understand was done to prevent reverse image search results. The LinkedIn bio was largely accurate. Her real job title, her real employer, her real general skill set. Everything just correct enough to pass. She handed the phone back to Mara. She said, "This isn't me." Mara said, "I know. I figured it wasn't. That's why I'm showing you." Claire asked her how many messages she had received from this account. Mara counted. She said, 3. Over about 8 months. Claire said, "What did they say?" Mara pulled them up. The first message, from 8 months ago, mentioned that Claire was under a lot of stress and might need to take some space from certain professional relationships. The second, for months ago, suggested that a project Claire had been coordinating was likely to be delayed because Claire had been struggling to keep up. The third message, sent the previous week, said that Claire had been job hunting and was likely to leave within 6 months, and that Mara should probably start thinking about finding another collaborator for ongoing work. Claire read all 3 messages. She thought about the project that had been delayed. That had happened. It was the first time in her professional life that a major project had slipped past a deadline. She had blamed herself. She had apologized to the client directly, and to her employer, and to her own internalized standard of being someone who never missed a deadline. She had never been able to identify the exact cause. She remembered, now, that 2 weeks before the delay, one of her key contacts had become suddenly unavailable. She had assumed it was something on their end. She had assumed incorrectly. She put Mara's phone on the table. She took out her own. She opened LinkedIn and searched her own name. 2 profiles appeared. Hers, with 847 connections and 14 years of professional history. And a second one, slightly below it, with 312 connections and no work history before 14 months ago. The second one had her photo. The second one had her name. She clicked on it. The connections list included 3 of her current clients, 2 former colleagues, 1 person from her employer's leadership team. She looked at the messages she could see, the ones sent before the account settings had been changed to private. She counted 11. 11 professional messages sent to people in her network over 14 months, each one carefully designed to introduce doubt about her reliability, her commitment, and her professionalism. Each one plausible enough that no one had thought to verify. She set her phone face down on the cafe table. She looked at Mara. She said, "I need to figure out who did this." Mara said, "Do you have any idea?" Claire said, "Not yet." She was lying. She already had one idea. She was not ready to say it out loud. The idea was Priya. Priya Menon had been Claire's closest friend for 6 years. From the first week of the job, they had both started at the same company in the same month, sitting 2 desks apart in an open-plan office in the kind of proximity that either creates enemies or friends. They had become friends. The deep kind, built on shared commutes and long lunch breaks, and the specific bond of two people learning a new professional environment at the same time. They had stayed friends even after both of them moved on to different companies. Video calls every few weeks. The kind of friendship where you could go a month without talking and pick up exactly where you left off. The reason Claire's mind went to Priya and not anyone else had to do with a specific event, 2 years and 3 months earlier. Claire had applied for a position at a creative firm, a senior role she was well qualified for and genuinely excited about. She had been referred by a mutual contact, gone through 3 rounds of interviews, and made the final 2. She had not gotten the job. The person who got it was Priya. Claire had handled it the way she handled most things, professionally, quietly, without visible resentment. She had sent Priya a congratulations message. She had meant it, or she had believed she meant it. What she had not done was examine whether the process had felt fair, because it had not, quite. She did not know at the time whether Priya had known she was applying. She did not know if their mutual contact had told Priya. She did not know if Priya had had information about the other finalist, about Claire, that Claire had not had about Priya. She had filed those questions away. She had not answered them. They had continued their friendship with a careful surface that neither of them directly addressed. They still spoke. They still liked each other's work on LinkedIn. They still called when something big happened. But something had shifted that Claire had never been able to name. And over the following 2 years, the video calls had become less frequent, the messages more formal, the friendship slowly receding from the kind that was warm to the kind that was simply maintained. She had never said anything about the job. She had never asked Priya if she knew. She had assumed the discomfort was hers, a product of her own professional disappointment that she needed to manage and not impose on a friendship. She understood now, sitting at the cafe table with her phone face down and Mara across from her, that she might have been wrong about that. She thought about the account creation date. 14 months ago. The job had been 11 months after the job competition. 3 months after the job ended, Priya had started something. She thought about who would have had enough information about her professional life, her clients, her projects, her employers, her writing style, to construct a convincing imitation. Priya had known all of it, not because she was a threat, because she had been a friend. And friends, Claire thought, are the only people who know you well enough to impersonate you effectively. She did not confront Priya that day. She spent 3 days first. She used those 3 days the way she would have used them on any professional problem, systematically, without theater, building a picture from available evidence before drawing a conclusion. She went through her own LinkedIn connections and identified every person who was also connected to the fake account. She found 17 people from her professional network who had connected with a version of Claire that was not Claire. She began, carefully, without explanation, asking questions. She called a former client she was still friendly with and mentioned, casually, that she was doing some account housekeeping and had found some unexpected messages sent from an account that might not be hers. The client said, "Oh, actually yes. I got something a while back." He described a message that had told him Claire was struggling with mental health and might need to scale back. He had thought, he said, that it explained some things. Claire said, "What things?" He said, "You seemed a little off for a while. Distracted. I assumed you were going through something." She said, "I wasn't." He said, "I know." Looking back, she asked him to forward the message. He did. She read it at her kitchen table that evening. The message was hers in every visible respect. The syntax, the way she opened professional messages with a specific kind of self-aware acknowledgement. The vocabulary she used in professional contexts. But the content was a portrait of a woman having a quiet crisis. The phrasing was careful. Nothing so dramatic that it would require immediate action. Just enough that it would explain things, a slower response time, a missed deadline, a slight withdrawal from professional engagement, in a way that made the pattern look like a person struggling rather than a pattern being imposed on a person. She sat at the kitchen table for a long time. She thought about Priya writing those messages. She thought about Priya studying her tone, her syntax, her professional vocabulary, with the specific attention of someone who had listened to her talk about work for 6 years. She thought about every professional conversation she had ever had with Priya, the projects she had described, the clients she had named, the frustrations and victories she had shared across 6 years of friendship, because that was what friends did with each other. She had handed Priya a complete manual. Priya had learned from it. And somewhere in the 11 months after the job, somewhere in the cooling of the friendship that neither of them acknowledged, Priya had opened a laptop and begun to use it. If you've ever had someone use what you told them in confidence to hurt you, drop that in the comments. Because this kind of betrayal has no script. She reached out to 4 more people in the following 2 days. 2 of them had received messages. Both described the same pattern, a plausible, professional, slightly undermining note that had arrived in a context where it made sense. A message that had not raised immediate alarm. A message that had simply shifted a perception by a few degrees. And a few degrees, repeated across enough relationships over enough months, was enough to turn a thriving professional network into one that was managing a quiet version of Claire's supposed decline. She had enough. She picked up her phone. She called Priya. Priya answered on the second ring. Her voice was warm. Of course it was warm. Claire had thought about this in the 3 days. She had considered the possibility that Priya would be cold or evasive, or that there would be something different in her voice that would confirm or deny the accusation before Claire had said a word. There was nothing different. Priya said, "Hey, I was just thinking about you. How are you doing?" Claire said, "I need to talk to you about something." A beat. "Okay, sure. What's going on?" Claire said, "I found a LinkedIn account. It was created 14 months ago. It uses my name and my photo. It has been sending messages to my clients and colleagues. One of those messages went to my employer's HR department. I've collected evidence from 5 people in my network who received messages from it." Silence. Not long, but not the natural pause of confusion. The pause of someone processing how much had been found. Claire said, "I think it was you." Priya said, "Claire." Claire said, "I want you to tell me I'm wrong." Another silence. Longer. Claire waited. Priya said, "You weren't supposed to find it." She said it so flatly, so without performance, that for a second Claire almost missed what had been said. Not, "I didn't do it." Not, "What are you talking about?" "You weren't supposed to find it." Claire felt something shift that was not anger and not grief. It was more like the specific feeling of a room that has been rearranged in the dark. Everything slightly different in a way that takes a moment to map. She said, "Why?" Priya said, "Because you didn't even seem bothered. After the job, you sent me that message and you acted like nothing had happened, and it was like..." She stopped. She said, "I knew you were applying. Our mutual contact told me. I told them what I knew about your weaknesses. I'm not." A pause. "It worked. I got the job." Claire did not say anything. Priya said, "And then you acted like it was fine. And I couldn't. I needed you to feel it. I needed it to actually affect you." Claire said, "It affected me." Priya said, "You didn't show it." Claire said, "I was trying to be professional." Priya said, I know that. That's..." She stopped again. "I'm sorry. I'm saying it, and I know it's not enough. But I am." Claire sat in the dark kitchen for a moment. She thought about the job application 2 years ago. She thought about the mutual contact. She thought about the fact that Priya had not only benefited from information about her weaknesses, but had been the source of the fake account. 2 separate acts against the same person, separated by 2 years and connected by the same unaddressed grievance. She thought about the message that had gone to HR, the message that had stalled her promotion. She said, "I need you to close the account." Priya said, "Yes." She said, "I need screenshots of every message that was sent from it." Priya said, "Yes." She said, "And I need you to know that depending on what those screenshots show, I'm going to decide what to do next." Priya said, "I understand." She meant it. Claire knew she meant it because she had known Priya for 6 years. She could tell when Priya meant something. It turned out that was not enough. The screenshots arrived the following morning. Claire read them at her kitchen table with coffee that was actually hot for once, because she had made it deliberately instead of letting it sit while she did something else. There were 22 messages in total, more than she had initially found. She read each one. Then she made a list of everyone who had received a message and drafted individual notes to each of them explaining what had happened, that the account had not been her, and that she was in the process of addressing it. It took 4 hours. She was not going to rush it. She did not CC anyone. She did not frame it as a dramatic revelation. She simply stated what had happened, what the account had done, and that it had been closed. She told them she appreciated their professional relationship and hoped it would continue. She sent the notes. Then she made a second decision. She did not report Priya to the platform. She did not pursue legal action, though she had spoken to a lawyer, briefly, and understood that she could. She made this decision not from generosity, but from pragmatism. She did not want the cost of Priya's consequences to fall on her. She did not want to spend another year of her professional energy on something Priya had already taken 14 months from. She had the screenshots. She had the evidence. She had built back enough of her professional relationships in the 2 weeks since the cafe that she could feel the repair beginning. 3 of the people she had emailed wrote back within 24 hours. One of them, the former client who had called her a little off, said, "I'm really sorry. I should have asked you directly." She said, "You didn't know." She meant it. That was the thing she had spent the most time with. Not what Priya had done, but what the conditions were that had let it work. The messages had landed because they were plausible, because the people who received them already had a relationship with Claire and had been given a framework for slightly reinterpreting her behavior, because nobody had verified, because in 2026, receiving a message from someone's name and photo is still enough for most people to treat it as received from the person, because the digital surface of identity is thin enough that a determined person with enough information can stand behind it without being noticed. She thought about that for a long time. She changed her privacy settings. She audited every platform she was on. She told 4 people close to her what had happened, so that if anything similar arrived in the future, they would know to verify directly with her before acting on it. She has not spoken to Priya since the phone call. She does not know if she will. She thinks about the first week they met. Adjacent desks. 2 people learning something new at the same time. She does not regret the friendship. She regrets that it ended the way it did, not in a conversation, but in 14 months of something more careful and more permanent. What would you do if you found out someone had been sending messages in your name? If you've ever had someone use what you told them in confidence to hurt you, drop that in the comments. Because this kind of betrayal has no script.